Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. The Vikings beat the Jacksonville Jaguars version here from Jacksonville, and I have nothing more to say about it. That's it. They got the win, and let's not talk about anything else because it is going to be a rough ride talking our way through the Vikings victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars. 12-7, the final score. One of the most dominant performances that the Vikings have ever put on in terms of yardage differential and possession differential that we have seen. They controlled the ball all day. They ran the football. They threw it to TJ Hawkinson endlessly. And on defense, one of the premier games that Brian Flores' unit has put on. It reminded me very much of last year against the Raiders in Las Vegas, the way that Mac Jones and the Jacksonville offense, outside of one drive, never really came remotely close to scoring again. And even when they got a good break because Blake Cashman committed a face masking penalty, which apparently you can actually call in the NFL, it ended up being still a Mac Jones interception at the end of the game to close it out. And the Vikings are now 7-2. And here we are left with maybe the gnarliest feeling that we have had all season long. And last week was a little bit rough in itself, the fact that the Vikings got booed off the field last week. But in the second half, they came back together. They pretty easily beat the Colts. And it was like, okay, well, most things are sort of figured out and on to the next one. And the expectation coming in was that the Vikings would just annihilate the Jacksonville Jaguars and we would all move on with our lives. But they had to make it a lot tougher than that. So I am left feeling like, what am I supposed to do with this? The Vikings are 7-2. That is way ahead of the record that we would have expected from the Vikings at this point in the year. When we were going into the season, I think this was one of the games that we would have been talking about. Hey, man, this will help them get back into the season after a tough start. But instead, 5-0, 2 straight wins. You could make an argument, well, 7-2 is 7-2. You are what your record is. And on to the next one against another team that isn't very good. And when you look at the possession and yardage over the last 2 games against 2 bad teams, it's been completely dominant for the Minnesota Vikings. The defense is back. The offense is moving the ball in a world where Sam Darnold doesn't throw those picks. And trust me, we will go into all of it. In a world where Darnold doesn't throw those picks and they even get field goals down in the red zone, we would have been shrugging our shoulders and going, oh, well, pretty good win, move on with our lives. But those 3 turnovers leave such a bad taste in your mouth because it isn't something new for Sam Darnold. In fact, I have now counted up 6 times that Sam Darnold has thrown an interception inside the 25-yard line. And is that going to continue to be a trend with Darnold throughout his history as a quarterback? That has very much been the trend for him, not necessarily red zone interceptions, but just interceptions and big mistakes in general. And then we saw that more today. I think the overall feeling from most walking out of the game, and let me know in the comments, Dave Mizutani from the Pioneer Press will eventually join us here on the show. He went down to the locker room because of my flight. I'm on a little bit earlier than usual, but I got to get back to the airport. So I'm starting solo here. So I'm going to need your questions, your comments after this one, and help me out for how I'm supposed to feel about this, because sometimes in the NFL, you have to win ugly. There's no way around it. The Kansas City Chiefs are undefeated, and they probably have 7 of their wins have come ugly, including today, where they had to block a field goal to win against the Denver Broncos. In Kansas City, I'm sure they're saying, well, it's ugly, but hey, we're winning. What's the difference? But when we start to pick apart everything that happened here today with Sam Darnold, he looked a little bit antsy at the beginning of the game. And you could kind of tell something is not 100% right in terms of how comfortable he was feeling in the pocket, feeling with what he was seeing. And the answer to that was to move the ball by getting it to TJ Hawkinson. And he was very good at that over and over again. First downs, long drives, running the football effectively, all the things that we asked for. And that's why it's so hard to talk about, because everything that they did on offense, aside from inside the 25-yard line, was exactly what you would have said that Kevin O'Connell needed to do a couple of weeks ago when the offense maybe was struggling to stay on the field. They were talking about how they hadn't had many plays. Well, they had a lot of plays today, and they had a lot of first downs today. And it wasn't so much an explosive offense, but that slow churn offense that I had been asking them to have. And yet they get down into the red zone, and 3 different times, very, very bad decisions by Sam Darnold. Now, one of the interceptions was very questionable in terms of the referees. Now, the ball should never be there, but how it was not overturned when it looked like you could slow it down and see on the video that the ball was on the ground and never really truly secured. And my understanding is, I obviously I didn't see it because I'm here, but that the broadcast and Dean Blandino also talked about how it looked like the ball was still moving. So once again, we play the what exactly are the rules type of game with this team. But as far as Darnold's performance, it was the Darnold performance that everybody was afraid of for a long time here, that he had thrown a couple of interceptions, and last week he throws 2 bad ones, just ill-advised, what are you doing type of interceptions. And then today comes out and throws 3 more of those, but at the worst possible times that ruined long drives. One of the drives took 10 minutes only to end on an interception. But at the rest of the game, he was able to scramble for first downs. He was able to throw underneath to TJ Hawkinson, and they ran the football effectively with 2, and even Ty Chandler got in the game, different running backs after Aaron Jones got banged up. And they end with 400 yards of offense. It's hard to ask them to do anything else in terms of how they performed on a play-to-play basis, except for the quarterback at the end not coming through. So a lot of you, of course, are reacting to Darnold's performance as in this guy should have been pulled or they should go look for someone else, which is insane, of course. They can't do that at this point. And they certainly cannot pull him for Nick Mullins, who, if you remember, throws 4 interceptions every single time he plays. This is the roller coaster that we all strapped ourselves into at the beginning of the season. And think about with a roller coaster, just how it works. So when you're a little kid, you see it, you want to go on it, and you're like, oh, this looks like it's going to be really fun, kind of crazy, right? And so your parents say to you, now it's a little scary. We're just warning you. And then when you get to the top and you get to go down on that dip, you start freaking out because it's not exciting. It's scary. That's how I feel like the experience is with Sam Darnold, where we all say, you know what, this is going to be a roller coaster with him. Look at his past career, look at what he's been, look at the interceptions, the sacks. We know how it's going to go. There are going to be days where he frustrates the heck out of you and you go, what are you doing? And you can't explain it at all. When he's 5-0 and he's got some passes that should have been picked off that aren't caught, everyone says, don't look at those. Don't worry about those. And then now that you've hit the downswing of the roller coaster, it is pretty terrifying and pretty frustrating. And I think that's how it's going to be with Sam Darnold. And there really isn't anything they can do about it. Now, that doesn't mean that Kevin O'Connell called a perfect game here today. I certainly had, once again, some critiques over a trick play. Kevin O'Connell getting 1 for 1 last week in trick plays, maybe a little bit too much confidence there, and comes into this one with a chance to put the dagger in the Jaguars late in the game, decides to run a double reverse that goes backward for 7 yards. And then even with 3rd and 1 late in the game, this man refuses to run the ball on short yardage. I don't know why. I thought maybe Cam Akers would help out a little bit with that, being the tough running back that he is, but instead tries to run a play action. Sam Darnold gets sacked for a big loss. And there were times where O'Connell could have been less aggressive. There were also times where I don't even think he was supposed to be that aggressive and decided to fire the ball into traffic. I mean, sometimes with Darnold, I think the real Achilles heel is it's not when he can throw on time and he sees his first read open. It's when he sits in the pocket and then has to quickly react to where to throw the football. I think he sees things that aren't there, or sees or doesn't have the footwork or the setup to be able to make the throw that he's looking for, because a couple of the decisions, if the throw was okay, it wouldn't have been that bad. So the one that he threw in front of Justin Jefferson, if he throws it up over the top of Jefferson and it's either Jefferson in the back of the end zone or nobody, then it's a fine play. But instead, he underthrows him and it gets picked off. And that's another frustrating part of Darnold's game, where he was completing a pretty high amount of his passes again for the second straight week. And yet, for the second straight week, the ones that went bad went super bad. And Mike, I agree with you. There's too many late decisions, and he just feels like he is not okay with a check down, or maybe there's not as many check down options as the Vikings should have. I don't know, but there was one of the interceptions where Aaron Jones, and there were three, so I don't remember which one, but I think it might have been the Jefferson one, where Aaron Jones is coming underneath on a check down and Darnold just decides he's not going to throw that, or doesn't see it, or doesn't think of it as an option, where I feel like the best quarterbacks in the NFL understand when to use that. 4th and 8 might not be the best time to use it, but there are a lot of times during a game where checking down underneath is there. And Sam Darnold does not do it as often as I think a lot of the best quarterbacks. He also just doesn't seem to have a great sense of, if we just get a field goal here, it's fine. Darnold going for broke, firing the ball into the end zone on all of these plays. And it's kind of like last week where he's rolling to his left, he's got nothing there, and he says, no, I have to throw for this touchdown. And with the way the defense was playing today, it was game manage this and you'll be fine. Get field goals and you'll be fine. You don't even need touchdowns to win a football game like this, as was well proven by, shout out to Parker Romo, coming from the XFL last year to the Vikings, making all of his kicks. The long snapper that they just brought in, really good job by all those guys to figure it out. Wasn't perfect, wasn't flawless right down the middle, wasn't flawless snaps, but they did enough to put enough on the board to win this game as hideously as they did. So I'm going back and forth between, all right, we knew this was going to be a thing at times. We knew that Darnold was going to be frustrating at times, that he would make you want to rip your hair out at times. But overall, they've continued to win games, and they're 7-2. And not every game in a great season, no matter what team it is always going to be pretty. For the long term, though, there doesn't seem to be any answer whatsoever when it comes to the turnovers and sacks that Sam Darnold takes. The other side of it just has to be really good. And today, the other side of it was pretty good. I thought the other side of it was really good against Indianapolis, but it was not good enough. And the other side, I mean, the running game, which was good today, the play calling, you can't have trick plays go sideways, and you can't have those plays where you're taking a sack on 3rd and 1 where you could just run the ball. You just can't have any hitches in the operation. You can't have a bad defensive performance either, because you're probably going to end up with your defense out there multiple times in the game when they shouldn't be because of turnovers. That means, as we saw in the first 5 games, that the Vikings have to take the ball away from the other team every game in order to continue winning each week. So I know that there is going to be a ton of frustration with Darnold. There's no talk whatsoever, not even begin of talk of changing the quarterback. He is going to be the quarterback for the rest of the year. Okay. Like that's not even a beginning to be a discussion, because it was much crazier with Nick Mullins than it was under Sam Darnold. But at the same time, it does make you wonder if it limits the ceiling of this team. I still don't think that even at 7-2, we were ever talking about them as, hey, this is a Super Bowl favorite. I don't think so. But when we look at them on paper, we look at the advanced metrics, the expected points added, which is going to be amazing for the defense for this game. When we look at the DVOAs, the things like that, one of the big takeaways is going to be that they are matching up with a lot of the other best teams in the league in terms of those advanced metrics, even despite the fact that Sam Darnold is having some of the problems with turnovers that he is. And part of that is the yardage, where they just outgained the opponent by so much. I mean, and that's the thing. If I just showed you the box score and I didn't show you how many points they put up, I just showed you the yardage, the time of possession, the rushing, passing, the defense, every part of that, you would have said 27-3 is what they won this game, because it looks like total domination, and it really was. They had the football all day long, and TJ Hawkinson was absolutely tremendous. There's a reason why he's a Pro Bowler. There's a reason why I thought that once he came back, the offense could have these longer drives and could hold on to the football longer, as they did today. And I like that strategy. I like trying to throw underneath to TJ Hawkinson and try to frustrate the opponent and wear down the opponent and be able to run later in the game. I think that it works, and I think it did work in a lot of ways today. That's why it's hard to talk about a game that you get to the end and you go 12-7, huh? I mean, this might be as silly as 3-0 last year, except for in that game against the Raiders, they didn't move the ball effectively really at all. Today, it was just entirely based on those Sam Darnold turnovers. And on the defensive side of the ball, you can't praise the defense enough for today. I mean, they just bailed out Sam Darnold and the offense time and time again. And Mac Jones at the beginning of the game actually looked like he was going to have a decent day. I mean, he scored a touchdown, he had a big celebration, and he was throwing the ball fairly effectively early on. But then it just completely came apart for Mac Jones as the Vikings defense created more pressure against a worn down offensive line. And then the coverages seemed to confuse Mac Jones. They really couldn't run the football very well. Tank Bigsby got hurt early in the game. Travis Etienne had a few plays where he gained some yardage, but was not consistently running time and time again against the Vikings defense. So they shut down the defensive line. Jonathan Grenard had a couple of great plays in the backfield against the run. They were trying to throw swing passes, run bootlegs. They were trying just about everything with Mac Jones, and the Vikings defense gave up absolutely nothing outside of that one touchdown drive. And we kind of said going into this section of games, Flacco, Mac Jones, we didn't see coming. They probably lose if it's Trevor Lawrence, by the way. So that might be one thing to think about, is that honestly, that might be something that they got away with here, having Mac Jones. But he struggled so much once the Vikings started throwing pressures at him. Ivan Pace got to him. Blake Cashman got to him. Their blitzers were getting in because the Jaguars were not able to pick up those blitzes. The coverage, Byron Murphy, again, coming through with a big interception. At times, we have talked about Byron Murphy as someone who's been frustrating. Cam Bynum continues to prove that he's a guy that the Vikings should extend and want to keep here. And then he did the Olympic breakdancer celebration, which I don't know if you guys saw on television, was pretty darn impressive to pull that one out and do the entire thing when it came to the end zone. So the defense just made play after play, splash plays, shutting down runs. And if you are a great defense, then you should have a day like this against Mac Jones and give your team an opportunity to win ugly. Now, I think that's another part of it too, is over a season, we're going to get a myriad of different performances from someone like Sam Darnold. Early in the year, Darnold was unbelievable. He was hitting everything. He's hitting deep shots. He's playing on time. He's not getting pressure too often. And there have been adjustments, I think, by other teams. One of those adjustments is that everybody knows that Kevin O'Connell will never pass or will never run the ball on third down and short. And they seem to be blowing up some of these passes. There was bound to be adjustments to Sam Darnold, and I think that's part of it. But I also think some of it is just who he is and who he's always going to be. And when a guy like this plays for another team and not your team, you always think it's great. Like people like watching Jameis Winston because you never know if he's going to throw 5 touchdowns or 5 interceptions. Like, oh, it's a wild ride. It's fun. When it's somebody else's wild ride, you can enjoy it. When it's your own, it can be incredibly frustrating. I've always thought overall that as long as the Vikings got 10 to 12 good games from Sam Darnold, that they had a good enough defense and weapons to make up for it and still make the playoffs. But now, I mean, overall, what have they gotten? 4 good games out of, no, maybe 6? 6 good games, and they found a way to win 2 of the bad games against the Jets and now against the Jaguars. Those aren't great teams, but they're finding some ways to win those games. Let's see. Betwixt comes in with the super chat. Thank you, Betwixt. Really appreciate that. Just a reminder, in 9 games, we have 4 rushing touchdowns with Aaron Jones. This is coaching 50%, Darnold 50%. Yeah, no, I don't think so. Betwixt, I would not put that percentage on the interceptions. I think that the interceptions were 95% when it came to Sam Darnold today. Those decisions were just awful. And at times there were people open and he didn't throw the ball to them in the red zone. Sometimes it seemed like he panicked and just tried to fire it into a tight window. When he sits in the pocket, 1, 2, 3, 4, it seems like the longer he sits there, the worse the decisions get. Because then he starts to see things what they call flash. And when he sees things flash, that's when he tries to fit it into a window or throw when he doesn't have the real platform. Because when Darnold has a good platform, he's the best thrower or one of the best throwers in the entire league of just set the feet, throw on time. But when he has to just quick flash, pull the trigger, I don't think he's that accurate all the time. And we certainly saw that today. It wasn't even so much of the decisions, but the accuracy. I think when it comes to play calling, that's a difficult thing because I have my criticisms, which you guys have heard numerous times throughout the year. I also watched O'Connell's play calling lead to them holding the football for 40 minutes in this football game. I mean, there are times where you just think, Kevin, could you understand who your quarterback is? I think that may be what you're getting at. Kevin, understand who your quarterback is. You've got the ball. You are in field goal position against a team that can't move against you. Just hand it off. Just run something simple. And instead, it ends up, here's Sam Darnold trying to fire it into the end zone. And sometimes it just maybe needs a reminder to Sam Darnold that he is not playing for the New York Jets anymore. He doesn't need to try to win the game himself. But I also feel like we've reached the point where there's no telling Sam Darnold anything. This is just who he's going to be. And you have to work around it. And sometimes working around it means that he's going to win a game for you. He's going to put up huge numbers and be super efficient and hit deep shots down the field. But other times, he's going to throw these interceptions. I think that the way defenses are playing them, they've always tried to put a cap on the offense. They've always tried to play deep over the top to try to slow down Jefferson, but especially these last 2 weeks, the Colts and the Jaguars really did that, and they did it pretty well. They didn't allow anything deep. There was another interception that was brought back by a flag where he tried to throw the ball deep to Jordan Addison, and that didn't work out, and it was picked off, but that play didn't count. But how many throws went deep down the field today? There was one that was an overthrow to Josh Oliver. Aside from that, there has not been too many of those throws over the last couple of weeks that have been those bombs that we saw early on. So instead, he was working it underneath, and I think doing a good job of it for the most part, playing off of the run, throwing to Josh Oliver a few times, getting the ball to the tight end. It still remains an issue that he can't find Jordan Addison. But Addison made a great catch on an out route that was maybe 10, 15 yards down the field. That's where this is so frustrating. There's a lot of plays that I could think of in this game that were well designed, or Sam Darnold did a good job. His scrambles played a big role in this game. And then he just lost his marbles when they got inside the 25-yard line. And that has happened repeatedly. But to your point, Betwixt, I do feel like in the red zone that the running game in the red zone is something that they have not quite figured out. And I don't think that a Kevin O'Connell offense will ever figure it out. He wants to throw for touchdowns. And I think it was Dane Mizutani earlier this year who said that they're asking, or maybe it was Andrew Kramer on the show, they're just asking Darnold to do it all in the red zone. And eventually that's going to bite you. And that is what happened today. If we take a deep breath, though, in terms of all the freak out of how ugly it looked and how bad it was, the Vikings are 7-2. And let's think about their next two opponents. And I'll start to get to my grades, and we'll see if Dane Mizutani can get up here from the locker room in time to pop into the show real quick. So I'll start going through my grades for each position. You could give me yours in the comment section as well. But they're 7-2, and their next two opponents are the Tennessee Titans. And if they play like today with the interceptions, they could lose. But the Tennessee Titans, and then the Chicago Bears, their fans were cheering Fire Flus today, and they lost to the New England Patriots. Once again, they still have a very good chance to be 9-2. So how far am I supposed to go with saying the coach doesn't know what he's doing, the quarterback is terrible, and all that sort of thing, when you have a team that is making an argument for being the best defense in the league? And at least with the tight end back in TJ Hockenson, they have been on the field and completely dominated the time of possession over the last 2 weeks. So now they are going into these next two games with a defense that is not worn down anymore. And it was against the Rams and it was against the Detroit Lions, but now it's a fresh defense facing Will Levis and a very much struggling Caleb Williams. So am I supposed to say the season is over? Sometimes it does feel like that is the case. And, Betwixt, another super chat, and I appreciate you. Anybody who wants to jump in with that is great. Says defense covering for KOC and Darnold right now. Only Darnold. I just don't agree. I just don't think KOC called a bad game. I think he had some bad calls. I think he had some very bad calls. The double reverse is just insane. I don't know what I'm supposed to do about that. And I do agree with you that they could have run the ball more in the red zone when they had opportunities to get field goals. And he has said, and this is where I have to, with Kevin O'Connell, where we all have to just go, I don't know what to say. He's going to trust Sam Darnold. And sometimes that means interceptions. And sometimes that means 300-yard games where he completes 80% of his passes. That's just how it's going to be. But when you completely steamroll the other team in every facet outside of the red zone, I can't say the coach had no idea what he's doing. They were on the field the whole game on offense. So, well, let's go through it. Let's go through the grades. You guys are jumping in already. A lot of obvious ones maybe for the quarterback. For Sam Darnold, yeah, I think with Sam Darnold that any quarterback, not maybe Mac Jones, could have won this game against the Jaguars today. Any NFL quarterback who could have at very least just thrown underneath to TJ Hockenson, and probably 90% of quarterbacks, even backups, do a better job in this game than Sam Darnold did of trying to get the ball in the end zone when throwing 3 interceptions. And man, just think about how different this would be if they just kicked field goals there. It would have been a blowout if they just kicked field goals instead of the interceptions from Sam Darnold. Wade says the game plan to have 100% of the points scored by the new kicker and snapper worked to perfection. Thank you for the super chat. Wade, my whole point is, and maybe I'm not making it clear enough, that when your team on offense is moving the ball, running the ball really, really well today, great job by Aaron Jones, and TJ Hockenson, your Pro Bowler that you paid so much for, is doing great, catching everything and getting first down after first down. How can I say when the quarterback freaks out and loses his mind and throws interceptions that the coach did that? The only way you could say it would be if you're saying that they should have run the ball. And I agree. And I'm about that. I'm about running the ball. But I also think that those weren't passes that were, some of them weren't even into traffic. The guys were open. It was just bad throws by Sam Darnold. Betwixt says, can't both things be true? KOC has done great overall, but his play calling on third down in the red zone will bite us in the playoffs. Well, I don't know. It depends on who you play in the playoffs. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that. The playoffs are a really long way away. Do I think that interceptions like that from the quarterback limit what you can do if he throws those? Of course. Of course. Darnold, if he has a game like that, you will lose on an interception 100%. There's no question about it. But when it comes to the play calling, they converted a bunch of third downs today. That I just think it's very convenient to talk about that when, if they get into the end zone on those drives, this is a flat out blowout. And I think if you're questioning 3 or 4 calls in a football game, then guess what? You watched a football game. I don't know that I've ever watched a game where I didn't question some calls. So that's my point, is how far do I want to go? I want to criticize the double reverse. I want to criticize leaning into Darnold again too much in the red zone. But I think if Kevin O'Connell were standing right here, he'd be like, how many yards did we put up? Because receivers were open and Hawkinson was open. The other thing is, too, Darnold missed some open shots down the field as well. That's my thing, is does play calling cause you to throw those interceptions? No, the quarterback's decision making causes that. So I don't think you can just say, well, they didn't score a lot of points, so the coach sucks. Like that's my point. Dustin says, I love this team, KOC and Kwesi, and I'm excited for McCarthy. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough to bail on a 7-2 team. I don't know. Sometimes it's a win, guys. I mean, we did this dance last week as well. It is a win. So they're 7-2, and there's a long way to go here. But I think calling KOC's play calling is just to call it terrible is ridiculous. They have been on the field for, out of the last 120 minutes, probably 80 against Indianapolis and Jacksonville. I don't know what he's supposed to do differently to make him not throw interceptions when this man has thrown interceptions his whole career. He's usually thrown more than this. He's been in the top 5 in turnover-worthy plays every single year of his career where he's been a full-time starter. Every single one of those coaches, I guess, called the worst plays because they got picked off. So if Darnold isn't good next week, he'll continue to be the quarterback. I don't know what they're going to quit the franchise. They're not playing Nick Mullins. They're not signing Ryan Tannehill. That's asinine. They're not doing anything else. Guys, they are going to play Sam Darnold and ride the roller coaster to the end. Could it hurt them in the playoffs? Yes. I don't know what you want me to do about it. We're 9 games into the season. So it's always going to be this thing with O'Connell where he has decided that he is going to lean into Sam Darnold's ups and downs. You've seen the ups. Today was a major, major down. That's the roller coaster we're on. There wasn't a better option for the Vikings. Did you want Jacoby Brissett? There was not a better option for the Vikings than leaning into this, and it's gotten them to this point. But when it comes to Darnold throwing 3 interceptions, that's something that he's always had these games. And you could tell early on that he just did not feel comfortable in the pocket, that things were not coming out quick enough. And if your criticism is of Kevin O'Connell, buddy, let's have a better sense for when Sam Darnold is not at his best and lean into, hey, you're in the red zone, a screen pass. The screen game has disappeared entirely. That's a legitimate criticism. So I'm not saying it was great. I'm not saying the play caller, Kevin O'Connell, deserves an award for today. It's more that I think we got to put the right percentages on it, because the original question was 50% on each, and I don't agree with that when they did so well otherwise. And even with running the ball, they ran the ball extremely well today. But I feel you on when you get to the red zone, you can't just ask the quarterback to do everything. That is a completely legit criticism. So yes, Sam Darnold gets, I would give, I guess, a D minus because he definitely completed a lot of passes and then ruined a bunch of drives. So it's either an F or a D minus. I think the fact that they were able to have a lot of completions, get the ball to Hockenson as much as they did, have 10 play, 15 play drives, that he does deserve some credit for that, but only to move it up from an F to a D minus. So Dane Mizutani walking into the building here for the Pioneer Press has just come back from listening to Kevin O'Connell and listening to the Vikings locker room. And, you know, Dane, I just started giving out the grades and I was trying to decide between F and D minus for Sam Darnold. But let me get your opinion since you're here. The debate within the chat, and it's been a good one, guys. I appreciate it. No, I mean, I'm not, this week I'm not joking. There are other weeks where maybe I would have been, about Kevin O'Connell play calling and how we factor that into what happened today offensively. How much goes on him? I will tell you, my opinion has been, I don't know what he's supposed to do about Darnold freaking out and throwing the ball like that. But I get it. Some of the third and short stuff, the double reverse. What is your take?
Yeah, I'm sure the 3rd and 1 came up where they're just trying to run the clock out. They're moving the ball. And then he decides he wants to throw what he called, he was hunting an opportunity there because he felt they were packing the line in. He said he was hunting a walk-off. So I think he was basically saying he felt that they could pop an explosive there, which just goes back to it's just the ethos of Kevin O'Connell. It's always going to be. And we're going to have these debates as long as he's the coach, because I do think at his core, he wants to push the ball downfield. Even on 3rd and 1, he wanted to push the ball downfield. So yes, he plays a role in some of this. He talked a lot about the shell covers the Jaguars are playing, basically inviting TJ Hockenson to catch whatever it was 9 balls, Josh Oliver over. Like the Jaguars were not going to let the Vikings beat them over the top. But I think when we talk about the new shell coverage that's kind of gone throughout the NFL, and like, are the quarterbacks patient enough to play with the shell coverage? I think Kevin O'Connell, that also tests his patience. So I think there were times where his play calling left something to be desired. That said, no, the interceptions are 100% on Sam Darnold. The first one, it's tough play. He's expecting Justin Jefferson to win. Justin Jefferson doesn't win right off the line like he almost always does, tipped in the air. Those happen. It's not ideal, but those interceptions happen. The other two can't happen, can never happen. And it was interesting talking to Sam Darnold after the game because he basically said, yes, that can't happen. And at the same time, he said, but I think if I would have put the ball in a different spot, like there were opportunities. So I think O'Connell and Darnold are a match made in heaven because they both want to push the ball downfield. They both want to be aggressive. And I think it's kind of live by the sword, die by the sword thing with the Vikings. Some days it's going to look awesome. And some days it's going to look like this. So, yeah, I'm sure you're into the grades. And you said D minus for Darnold.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, well, I think when you put up that many yards, you can't go F.
Yeah, that's fair.
But just to comment on what you said, this is my whole point about Darnold and O'Connell. So earlier in the show, for those just joining, I compared it more in a more detailed way to a roller coaster.
Yeah.
As in, you tell your child before they get on a roller coaster what it's going to be like. You're going to go up and down. You're going to be really scared. And sometimes you're going to want to get off, but then it'll be fun in the end. And they're like, oh, that sounds great. And then when you have that really scary down moment, they let me off. Like, I don't want any part of this. That's how it is with these two, is what they're leaning into. What they are is they are home run hitters and strikeout guys. They are Ryan Howard from the Philadelphia Phillies, where you're going to hit home runs and you're going to have big days from Darnold. And sometimes, and this goes to the nature of questioning play calling, sometimes if you run that little play action and hit a deep shot on 3rd and 1, everyone's like, whoa, O'Connell, that was so cool. I've never thought he was good at figuring out when is when. And so you just have to strap in and hope that it works out for you and it ends up on the right side of variance. It was that decision. I also think we figured out when these happen, though, Dane, about Darnold. And this is the job of the coach to fix it. It happens when he's sitting and he's sitting and he's sitting,
Mhm.
and then it's, oh, I think I see something, or he's rolling out. Oh, I think I see something, and no, you didn't, or you couldn't get your feet there. But how much can you change in the middle of the season? Like, he's just going to throw these. He cannot throw them in the red zone. That's really the end of the story today. And I think O'Connell does have to try to protect him against that sometimes.
Yeah, and that is where I guess it does go back to the play calling at its core. Like, the interceptions in the end zone are definitely on Sam Darnold, but maybe there is, like, if you can tell pretty early on today, and I think we all could tell, like, little off, little off. The rhythm wasn't always there. Seemed like he was overthinking it a lot, couldn't process fast. Uh, there are, I think, opportunities then to call a different play that maybe doesn't take 3 seconds downfield to develop and have to go through 2 or 3 reads. So, yeah, it's a roller coaster. I think that's a perfect way to describe it, and the roller coaster analogy really does work because there are ups and there are downs, and at the end of the day, the season's been fun. They're 7 and 2, but there are gonna be some down moments this year. The down moment, I guess the bright side is the down moment came in a win today, but I don't think anyone's feeling super great about it, especially, like, even being in the locker room. Like, they're all saying the right things. They won. They're not gonna apologize for that. But every single person we talked to on the offense made it very clear, like, thank you, defense, for coming through. And I think everyone in the chat, everyone who's watching, every Vikings fan that watched the game would agree. Like, if the defense does not come through, completely different story, completely different conversation we're having right now.
Okay, so this is the weird thing is and we'll have to speed it up a little so
Yep.
I can catch my flight. But the running backs were great today. I mean, you want A minus? I don't know who's grading here. I guess we're both grading. I mean, Jones was great. He pounded forward. He was on the field a lot. He got banged up. He came back somehow. Cam Akers, even Ty Chandler had an 8-yard run. Everything except for the double reverse was effective. And this where I keep having trouble with the KOC criticism, because what have I been saying all year? I want him to run more. I know you can run with this offense. I want you to stay with it. I want you to have 10-minute drives.
Mhm.
Stay on the field. I was praising Kevin Stefanski and how, hey, there were some drives where he would just pound at the face of the other team. They ran the ball a lot. What was it, 32 times? You're pulling up the
I'm pulling
box
it up
score.
right now.
30 something times for 100 and whatever yard. I mean, it
So
was a good running day.
they ran 43 times today for 169 yards. So yeah, we could just go A. I don't even need the minus. Like, Aaron Jones, 5.2 yards a carry. Cam Akers, I think maybe you'd want a little more out of him than you got today, 2.9. But I think, like, overall he was able to shoulder some of that workload, which is why Cam Akers is there. It's not necessarily to be Aaron Jones, it's to spell Aaron Jones, and he did that effectively today. I might jump all the way up to A because Aaron Jones came back in the game. He got hurt. He talked about how he felt his ribs. He was worried at first that it might be broken. He went back, got an X-ray, everything checked out, and he said he knew he was ready the moment he was on the sideline. He'd come back after getting an X-ray, comes back negative. He puts a ball in his hand. This is the most football thing ever. He said, "I knew I was ready when I put the ball in my hand, and I felt like I could go." And then he got back in the game. So, that toughness, I do think they needed him in the end too. It's an A. And yeah, I guess the commitment over 40 carries, I never thought I'd see the day.
Well, that's what I mean. Is this is more along the lines of the game plan that I wanted. And if they kicked all field goals today and didn't throw interceptions on senseless or inaccurate throws,
Mhm.
and they won 20, if they kicked 7 field goals and won 21-7, we would have said, what a dominant performance
Yeah.
they just put on. The wide receivers and tight ends, that's a wonky one because the quarterback cannot make the throws that went wrong. Jefferson does have to win on his route, but he was also getting grabbed off the line of scrimmage. And it's not always going to be easy to run slants and stuff with him because they are so physical at the line of scrimmage with him and try to get away with anything they can. There weren't really drops or miscues, but also we have to factor in Addison really didn't get the ball very much today. Made one really nice catch. Hockenson, though, Hockenson on his own, A plus.
Yep.
What a player, A plus. And the rest of the guys, I don't know, were average. It just sort of whatever was supposed to happen happened. But the fact that they could not go down the field, That is a defense. I mean, this is a bad passing defense, but they also passed a lot successfully. I don't know. This is a hard one.
Yeah, like, I still think I'm, probably at around a B because they moved the ball, and to your earlier point, if they just kicked 7 field goals, or if one of those interceptions just goes for a touchdown and they win 20-7, like we're saying, like, it wasn't the best day, but the offense looked good. The offense moved the ball. It just looks worse when the points aren't on the board, when the offense doesn't score a touchdown, and then obviously when you're throwing interceptions in the red zone. But the Vikings did a good job taking what was given to them, and just because we're so used to Justin Jefferson going for 130 yards a game and he didn't do that today, like, I think the Jaguars made a concerted effort to take him away, to kind of do the Patrick Mahomes thing with the Vikings and dare the Vikings to, like, kill them by death by a thousand cuts. And for the most part, they did that. They moved down the field. The one drive was 17 plays long. Went to TJ Hawkinson like 3 or 4 times on big third down conversions. So I think the pass catchers did their job today. It wasn't gaudy stats, so I don't think we're getting to an A level. But as far as, okay, the Jaguars want to play us in a shell, we're just going to find these little openings underneath. They did that for the most part, and I think we do get spoiled, and Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in the game, and we're almost used to triple-digit receiving yards from him, and when you see 48, you say, "Yeah, well, were they that good?" TJ Hawkinson had a really good day. Josh Oliver continues to emerge as a pass catcher, which I think is going to be valuable. Yeah, I guess they need a free 3 a little bit more, but overall, like, I would stay at right around a B, like, because I thought for the most part they did their job, and sans turnovers, I think the numbers overall on the offensive side would have looked a lot better.
I'm being told by the chat that the reason we're defending KOC's play calling is because we don't want to lose our press access. That's one that's never
Huh.
been thrown at us before. Has the Pioneer Press ever had its credentials pulled from any pro sports team, guys? Like, let's grow up here. Also, yeah, I know all my years of criticizing Mike Zimmer and so forth, and they still have me with one of these. So I don't know. I think actually just I disagree with you on some of your criticisms, but that's a good way to get blocked in the chat if you say that. Anyway, so let's move on. Offensive line, I think it
Only
was
1 sack, yeah.
it was a weird one because I felt like they were giving up pressure at times early in the game, but the Jaguars didn't dominate the line of scrimmage. They certainly were able to get push in the run game, and there's always going to be the signature Ed Ingram play of the day where you're like, oh, okay, well, that third one play call, that was blown up when the guy over him. But, when it comes to the offensive line, they did a good enough job to have the offense operate the way it was supposed to operate. There was some pressure allowed by Cam Robinson today. Thought that might happen against a really good opponent. And I think that when we look at the grades from PFF and things like that and go through the tape, we're going to go, yeah, yikes. There were some bad plays there from the offensive line. But once again, if you run like they did and you are the interceptions, Darnold's not even pressured. That's the crazy thing about those interceptions is that he wasn't even pressured. I thought it was fine. I'd give it maybe a B.
Yeah, Darnold only took 1 sack, and that shouldn't have been a sack because that shouldn't have been a pass. He took a sack on that 3rd and 1, which should have been a run up the middle. So take that away, take that play calling away. In that moment, the Vikings finished with 0 sacks allowed today. I know that's not how it works, but like that shouldn't have been a pass from the beginning. If it wasn't, they protected well enough. And you're right, it wasn't like every single time Darnold threw an interception, he was under duress. He just had the ball too long in his hands, and when he does that, I think he speeds himself up, and we see what we saw today. But the 402 yards and 82 offensive plays, like, you don't do that without a pretty dang good performance from the offensive line. There were moments, Cam Robinson got absolutely bull rushed by Josh Allen on one play. There was a play where Ed Ingram finished with his face into the ground. Everyone saw Ed Ingram just kind of looking around on that 3rd and 1. Like, there's always going to be moments like that from an offensive line throughout the game. But by and large, they played really well today. I think it didn't really feel like he was under constant duress, even if at times look, they get paid too. The Jaguars are going to generate some pressure over the course of a game, but I thought for the most part the offensive line held up pretty well.
Let's get to the defensive side of that, which is hard to not give a lot of A's. The defensive line slowed down the run game. Travis Etienne got a couple of big runs, but they couldn't run consistently, even though it was an even type of situation where they could have established the run and pounded away at the Vikings, but they did not do that. So much credit to the D line on that. Jonathan Grenard getting into the backfield for some TFLs. I don't really actually think Mac Jones was crazy under pressure, but they were able to get a couple sacks. If I'm giving out the A, I probably give it to the linebackers. Blake Cashman coming back, absolutely huge. Maybe his only demerit, face masking, as opposed to just bringing down Mac Jones. But they were everywhere. Ivan Pace was in the backfield. They were making tackles. And I think this is a game where we could point to and say, yeah, when Blake Cashman's in there, everything is different. So front seven, if you will, gets I would say a B plus or an A for me overall.
Yeah, I thought once they decided to start heating up Mac Jones, it was like for the first quarter, like Brian Flores was content to feel out like what the Jaguars wanted to do, and that's when you saw the 9-play drive where Mac Jones ends it in the end zone. He celebrated like he won the Super Bowl. It was probably a little cathartic for that guy to come home to Jacksonville, score a touchdown. I think you saw that emotion out of him. But like once they decided to heat Mac Jones up, they dominated the game. So I would say like, and we'll talk to Brian Flores on Tuesday, like why not do that from the beginning? But I would imagine there was a method to the madness. But once they decided to bring the pressure, Mac Jones cowered and started to look scared again. So B, I think that's probably B plus is probably right there. They, look, when they needed to, when the chips were on the table and the defense needed to make plays, it was the entire defense collective as a whole making plays. So I can't go much lower than a B plus for either part, front seven or back, the back side of the defense, because like I said when I jumped in, like they don't win the game without a masterful performance on that side of the ball. Who cares how bad the Jaguars are? Like the defense still deserves their flowers for what they did today, and it does start up front.
Yeah, the secondary coming up with the interceptions, that was also big. Cam Bynum, that's not an easy play. I mean, you're going back and back and then kind of reaching up and grabbing it. And somehow that's called at the 1 yard line. Make it make sense because he wasn't down. So how are you down? I don't really get it, but those are football rules for you. I guess he should have picked it up because I thought he did the right thing, just taking a knee, but I guess he should have picked it up and ran it out. I thought if you caught it and continued into the end zone, that you were that it was a touchback and not a safety, and that rule is there specifically for that type of play. But it was a little wonky with the reffing. They weren't very good at figuring out if guys were in bounds or not, things like that today. And also, they weren't very good, and this hasn't come up too much because people are angry after this win, but the interception hits the ground, the second pick. I don't know what else to tell you. It just does. What the rules are, how replay works, every week we come in here and go, no idea, my friends. It's what makes the NFL so fun, I guess, is that you never know what the rules are. The ball moves around on the ground after the pick, but it is what it is, my friends. So coaching is the last one. Make that quick so we can get our big picture, and then I got to go.
Uh, it's hard because Kevin O'Connell, like I say, you passed because they won. You put up 400 yards. Like you would, if I was just grading Kevin O'Connell, it'd be like a C plus. But I would give an A plus to Brian Flores and the defense. They held them to less than 200 yards of total offense. So maybe I end up right around a B. Like there was some good, there was some bad. Like people are gonna consistently and always hate on Kevin O'Connell when a game looks clunky, and at times they should. But they put up 400 yards of offense, and if the quarterback doesn't turn the ball over 3 times, the scoring numbers look better. Incredible performance from the defense. So I'll just go B for coaching all around. Probably a C-ish for Kevin O'Connell. Probably an A-ish for Brian Flores.
Oh, I mean, definitely to make the adjustment to then ramp up the blitz on Mac Jones. He had no idea what he was doing after that. And this is a good point that you made about for the most part, they're taking what the defense is giving them. But then it's like, I can't do that for very long. I need to have my big plays and try to take my shots. So I guess with O'Connell, what he's got to realize after today is that everyone is going to try to do this to you the rest of the way defensively. They're all going to try to do that to you the whole rest of the way, which is keep you thrown underneath, wait till you get impatient, try to steal the ball from Sam Darnold. And like 80% of the way there for being patient, and the 20% got them hurt at times. So yeah, I mean, you have to separate the offense and defense. The long snapper grade, the kicker gets an A. The long snapper, it wasn't perfect, but for those guys to come in here after an injury last week and get the job done and win the game, I hope that Parker Romo got a game ball. Great job by him to make his kicks when they needed it. So the big picture on this, for me, Dane, is pretty simple. I think that you should strap in and prepare yourself for games where you might be frustrated at the end.
Mm-hmm.
They are also set up, if they win the next two games, to be 9-2 against two quarterbacks that are struggling, two organizations that are floundering. They're cheering for the coach to be fired in Chicago.
Yeah.
Will Levis is playing against this team. And as far as the rest of the year goes, the big picture, a lot in the comment section of, well, this team can't win the Super Bowl. I don't know what to tell you about that. It is a long season, and the Vikings are set up to race for the NFC still. I don't know. Like, sometimes it's going to be pretty gnarly, and it was really gnarly today. But I also don't think we have to treat it like a loss, because it was a win and it goes down to 7-2. And I don't remember any season where I've ever covered that a team has made the playoffs and every game was just awesome and they killed everybody. I wasn't covering football in 1998 with the Vikings. I was 12. So that's the best I can do. I think that a lot of your guys' critiques are accurate and some of them are being frustrated. But when it comes to the turnovers from Darnold, I think that's going to be a week-to-week thing. Some weeks it's going to be okay, and you're going to win, and it's going to look great. And some weeks it's going to be like, what the heck just happened there? That's who they are. So, your thoughts?
I think that's a great point, because we only get 17 of these things guaranteed, right? Like 17 weeks a year we get to watch football on Sundays. So I think every single time the team doesn't look awesome and amazing, like a certain subsection of fans are going to freak out and think that they should fire everyone because we don't get to watch them do it until the following Sunday. If the Timberwolves stink one night, they play 2 days later. Same with the Wild. The Vikings don't. So now people who aren't satisfied with this 12-7 win have to wait until they play Tennessee. So I get the instant reaction of oh, that was a horrible game. I waited all week to watch this and that's what they gave me. But look, they won. And to Matt's point, you don't play great every single week. You just don't. And that's not us apologizing for what they did or did not do today. That's just the facts. You can go through every single team. The Chiefs aren't 8-0, 9-0. I don't know what they are. They played horrendous some weeks and they just win. Some weeks it doesn't look great, and that's okay. I will say what Kevin O'Connell said today resonated with me, and it's going to really piss off a lot of people in the chat. But it's a good team wins that football game. I think he's right. I think a bad team makes an excuse for the third Sam Darnold interception, and the defense says, you know what, screw this. We can't win today. It's just not our day. It was ugly. It wasn't pretty. I can see there are certain cracks in the foundation that might worry people, but at the same time, you're 7-2. And if we take the team that we saw at the peak of their powers this year, which I do think they can get to at times, they can contend with any team on any given week. It's just that some weeks it could also look like this. So, look, they're still 7-2. They're going to get to contend in the NFC. They're one Lions loss away from week 17 if everyone continues to take care of business, being real, or week 18 being really, really important. Even if they don't win the NFC North, week 18 is probably going to be a really fun, important game between the Vikings and the Lions. They're 7-2. They're moving forward in the NFC, and I don't know what else to say, but it's fine. If I told you in July that they were going to be 7-2, but it was going to look ugly in Jacksonville, you probably would have been like, "Well, that's fine. Like, we'll take 7-2." So I don't know. I'm at a loss with people being super frustrated about another win.
Okay, let me just say this though. If Sam Darnold keeps doing that, they won't achieve much.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, that's true. But at the same time, like I think that goes back to like the very binary way of thinking about the NFL,
Right.
which is I get it. It's fine. I just said like you only get 17 of these things, but like can we win the Super Bowl or can we not win the Super Bowl becomes like is this team worth following? Like yeah, if Sam Darnold continues to play like that, no, they can't win the Super Bowl. Even if Sam Darnold continues to play like he did through the 5-0 start, they might not win the Super Bowl. So it's going to look like this sometimes throughout the course of the next 8 games. It just is.
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know if there's any solution. It's only that you have to hope you're on the right side of it. Because if you're on the right side of it, they could be the team they were at 5-0, and if you're on the wrong side of it, you're grinding out wins against the Colts and the Jaguars. But we know that they're going to continue to be aggressive. They're going to continue to lean heavily on Sam Darnold, and all I would say is strap yourself in. So, anyway, thanks everybody for watching. And from Jacksonville, what a time it was. We'll never forget the time we all flew here to watch a 12-7 football game. So thanks for everybody's time. Really appreciate it. And we will talk to you when I am back in